Unless you circled the soup for us.
I did.
Can I have your attention, please?
Sure.
Alrighty, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started and get everybody home at a reasonable time tonight. Before I start, we're going to try to do the impossible. Some of you, especially in these two rows right here, your neck will get really tired turning this sideways for about 4 hours during this presentation. So,
People say it was 6 hours.
yeah, 6 hours. So if you want to space out a little bit and turn your chairs around a little bit, it might be easier to watch and be part of it. We'd love for you to do that. So everybody place their order.
Yes.
The hardest thing you have to do tonight is remember what you ordered at the end, because we always seem to have a problem with that. But I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. I think I went around and met all of you personally. In case I missed somebody, my name is Mike Wilk. I'm the president and the founder of this company, Five Rings Financial. And Five Rings is a company very similar to a Merrill Lynch or an A.J. Edwards or an Edward Jones or a Schwab. The difference is we work primarily with middle Americans as opposed to millionaires. And I hope that's not an insult to anybody here. Anybody here already a millionaire? I want to introduce you to who's buying dinner for everybody tonight. Anybody here want to be a millionaire?
Yes.
Yeah, we all like to have more money, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Not only how to accumulate money, but also potentially how to hold on to that money and never lose a dime again the rest of our lives. So generally, there's two groups of people who come to my presentations. The first group are those who maybe have never saved a dime before in their life. They're finally at a point where they know they have to get serious about saving and investing money if they want to have any chance for financial dignity in their lifetime. Now, trust me, this is not just the 20-year-olds in the room. The average age of a person in the United States that starts saving money for retirement is actually 53 years old. That's pretty alarming when you think about the world we live in today. We live in a society where people spend every dime they make raising their children. When they're finally out of the nest and through college, that's when people start to pay close attention to their retirement plans. Well, the good news is there's still hope. We can still reach our goals no matter where you're at in that situation. The second group are those that have accumulated money over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years in 401ks or IRAs or savings accounts or stock plans. And the reason they come is they'd like to learn how to protect the money they've already saved and invested. They just don't want to lose any more money. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, we've had kind of a crazy stock market the last 10 or 20 years. Anybody familiar with that at all? Yeah. How about the last 10 or 20 days? Right? When the stock market has become like a roller coaster. And most of us grew up loving roller coasters, but this one, a little too scary, a little too steep, a little too fast, those curves are a little too tight. So most people in America, particularly that middle America sector, they're looking for a way to get off of that emotional roller coaster. Well, it's okay to get off the roller coaster as long as you have someplace else to go. The challenge I'm faced with is when people walk through that door for my workshop, 99% of them believe there's only two places you can put your money, either the bank or the stock market. And right now, neither one of them are particularly appealing, so what a lot of people are asking us all the time is, aren't there alternatives? Are there other places we can put our money where we can still earn reasonable interest rates, but avoid that risk and that volatility of what's happening in the market right now? Well, the answer to that is yes, there are places like that, and we're going to share some of those with you a little bit later tonight. So before I get started, I always like to take a survey and kind of find out what kind of a group I'm dealing with. So how many of you did come tonight to learn how to grow a big savings account or a big retirement account or a big pile of money somewhere? Okay. How many of you came because you'd like to learn how to protect the money you've already saved and invested, you don't want to lose any money? All righty. How many of you would like to learn some ideas like how to pay less in taxes? That's a two-hander, right?
Taxes free.
Yeah. That's right, the wave that just broke out. So how many of you just came for the free dinner and wish I'd get this over with as fast as possible?
I'm very hungry.
Yeah. All the agents in my company, thank you very much. How many of you aren't going to raise your hands no matter how many questions I ask tonight? 2 or 3 of you I've noticed, and that's okay. We really appreciate all of you being here for sure. So this is my 44th year in business. For 44 years now, I've been traveling around the United States teaching and educating that middle America and that upper middle America market how to work with their money. In those 44 years, I've hired and trained over 50,000 agents now in all 50 states. And we've also have about 500,000 or 600,000 clients under management. Most of them middle Americans and upper middle Americans like all of us in the room. That doesn't mean we can't help the wealthy. I have a client right here in the tech center worth $275 million. So we can help the wealthy, but the vast majority of people we work with are people that are potentially shut out of the Merrill Lynches and the Schwabs. Maybe just don't have quite enough money to get in those doors. So who helps that group of people? Who helps the almost 300 million middle Americans who have almost no financial representation in our country today? We dedicated our company to those people and to that promise 44 years ago, and we still do it night after night, at about 300 or 400 workshops a month like this around the United States. Now, if you've ever been to a financial workshop before, I want to tell you we do two things completely different. Number one, you might have noticed when you walked in, we did not immediately write down your name and your address and your phone number and your cell phone number, your children's phone numbers, email addresses, DNA samples, fingerprints, whatever it takes so that we can call you week after week and month after month and year after year until you're forced to move to a different state and join the witness protection program to get away from us. If you've ever been to a traditional financial seminar, it's probably not very funny to you because they're probably still calling. Once you get on a list, you literally could never get off that list. We only work with volunteers in our company. We believe our information is valuable and vital, and if it fits your needs, we think you're probably going to ask for more information. If it doesn't fit your needs, we appreciate you coming anyway. Maybe it'll fit your needs in the future, or maybe you know somebody you can introduce us to. Bottom line is I just want everybody to relax tonight because this is purely an educational workshop. The second thing that's vastly different is we never sell anything at our financial workshops, never ever. So you can all take a big deep breath tonight. We're not going to sell anything tonight. Hope you didn't hide your wallets and purses in your cars on the way in, afraid of me like I was going to sell you something tonight, because that's just not going to happen. However, kind of hope you did hide your wallets and purses in your cars. I've got a guy going through your cars right now. That's how we pay for these dinners, and every little bit helps for sure, right? So 44 years in business, I know quite a bit about money today. But 44 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about money. The only thing I knew about it was I didn't have any. 44 years ago, I was 26 years old, I was 5 years out of college, and I was totally broke. And I wasn't a little broke, I was a lot broke. I was $30,000 in debt on a credit card at 18% interest. Now, $30,000 in debt today is not that really big of a deal, but 44 years ago, that was an enormous accomplishment to get that far in debt. I mean, $30,000 44 years ago would be like $100,000 today. Imagine being 26 years old and $100,000 in debt. I was so far in the hole, I thought I would never get out. And one day out of the clear blue sky, a postcard came in the mail inviting me to a financial seminar. I can remember that day that the postcard came in the mail. I thought it was about the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought, what kind of company would invite somebody like me to a financial seminar? Living paycheck to paycheck, $30,000 in debt. So I thought some guy in the mailroom put the wrong sticker on the wrong postcard and mailed it to the wrong person. But I also thought to myself, well, you know what? It was their mistake, not my mistake. I'm going to go check this out. Go see what rich people talk about behind our backs and kind of see what the secrets of money are. When I look back on that now, 44 years, I realize the reason I went that night is the same reason so many people come to our workshops every night around the United States. I was just looking for a glimmer of hope. I thought if I could learn just one thing that would turn things around for me and my family, get us on the right track, it'd be worth any price I needed to pay, even if I was embarrassed in front of the rich people. So I went to the presentation. Turns out, it wasn't a mistake after all. It was a gentleman giving a class on why the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer in our country. And I wish I could tell you that after 44 years we've made a huge difference in America. But the reality is it's actually way worse today than it was 44 years ago. The disparity between the haves and the have-nots in our country today is astronomical. I'm sure you're all familiar with Forbes magazine. Everybody know Forbes? #1 business magazine in the world. Mm-hmm. Every year they print one issue called the Forbes 400. It's the 400 richest people in America. If you add up the wealth of those 400 people right now today, they have more money than 83% of the population of the United States all put together. 400 people have as much money as 300 million people all put together. I'd say that kind of qualifies as haves and have-nots. Would you agree? It's a pretty big problem. And if you research society, you'll identify it's a really dangerous place for our country to be. Actually, no society has ever survived it. It usually leads to chaos and revolution and crazy stuff. But we're not going to talk about that tonight, but we are going to talk about things we could have done to make things better. Well, the gentleman I went to the seminar I went to, the gentleman that I went, his explanation as to why we have this gap, and it's the same thing we believe tonight, is that we have an education problem in our country. We don't have a money problem. We're the richest country in the world by far, but we do have an education breakdown. Think about this for a second. We go to school in this country for 12 years to get a high school diploma, 16 years to get a college degree, and we learn reading and writing and arithmetic. Pretty important stuff, and we've got to learn that, right? But then we grow up and become adults. Somewhere along the way, there's 3 other things they might have wanted to teach us in school that would have helped us in our adult lives. Little tiny things like how to stay married, how to raise kids, and how to handle money. Would you agree that those 3 things are a teeny bit important? If you're like 99% of the people who come to my workshops, there's a 99% chance you never had one class in your life on any one of those 3 subjects. So how in the world would they expect people to make good decisions in these areas if they don't teach us and educate us? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is a lot of us are not making very good decisions, especially when it comes to money. Since we're not taught in school to do with our money, what most of us do the minute we get out, we just do what mom and dad did. And they did what their mom and dad did, and it's gone on for generations. In the past, it wasn't a problem. Because in the past, your parents or your grandparents, when they retired, they had this thing called a pension. And when you retired with a pension in America, the day you retired, the company turned on a faucet and you got a paycheck every month the rest of your life. If you live 10 years, you get a check every month for 10 years. But if you live 30 years, you get a check every month for 30 years. You could never outlive your money. Well, guess what happened in America in the 1980s and the 1990s? People started living too long. So pensions were designed for people to die at 65 to 70, and people started to live to 80 and 90. So pensions were literally bankrupting huge corporations. So we switched in America from pensions to 401ks. Well, there's nothing wrong with 401ks, they're tremendous. We do thousands of them a year. But there is one challenge with the 401k, and the challenge is we have total control of our own money. So the day we retire, we can take the whole thing out, and that's what people do. And they buy motorhomes and take trips they've been putting off, and second homes and new cars. So guess how long the average 401k lasts in America today? 7 years is the national average, 7 years. So I want to paint this scenario for you, what's happening in America today, so you can see what the problem is. On average, we retire at 65, the money's gone by 72, and the national death rate right now says that most of us are going to live to 82. Anybody see a problem there? The last 10 years of our life, we live in the absolute worst financial position we've ever been in our lives, literally just on Social Security. Average Social Security check today is less than $2,000 a month. Virtually impossible to live on that. So what we're going to show you a way today, a little later, is a way you can take a portion of your portfolio and put it into something that looks just like your grandparents' pension account, where someday you'll be able to turn on a faucet and get a check every month the rest of your life, never ever outlive your money, and live in dignity all of years. We'll get to that in a little bit. Well, let's go back to the seminar. 43 years ago, I walked in the room, the guys did the same thing I did. He said, how many of you want to be a millionaire? And we all raised our hands. And he said, well, before tonight, if you weren't on your way to become a millionaire, it wasn't your fault, because you've never been educated, remember? But he said, after tonight, the ball's going to be in your court. He said, I'm going to teach you the simplest, easiest way to accumulate $1 million in a lifetime, and if you don't do it after tonight, it'll be nobody's fault but your own. So he went up to a board, and he said, how many of you think you can save $5 a day? How many of you here think you can save $5 a day? You know why we know we can save $5 a day for sure? Because we blow $5 a day, don't we? How many of you are $5 less than when you got up this morning? Anybody got a program like that going on? Yeah. According to statistics in Middle America, it's actually closer to $20 a day we spend on things that we really don't need. Now, it doesn't seem like $20 a day, because it's not 20 on Monday and 20 on Tuesday and 20 on Wednesday. It's more like 3 on Monday and 4 on Tuesday and 6 on Thursday, and then Saturday rolls around. How many of you are willing to admit Saturday can be a really bad day for money? Anybody got that problem? You bet. Here we are at Nordstrom's. There's a $300 pair of high heels we cannot live without, because we got the $300 dress last month and it all goes together. Or you're a guy at Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's getting a $300 fishing rod. Or maybe you're into high heel fishing. That's $600 altogether. I don't know what you guys are into. We don't have money for that, but we have credit cards, don't we? And we swipe that through there and we buy all that kind of stuff. If you add up all those kinds of purchases and all your Starbucks and all your going out to eat and get a big grand total and divide by 365, you know what it works out to? About $20 a day. It is absolutely amazing how much money filters through our fingertips, $2 and $3 and $4 at a time. Doesn't seem like a big deal today. 20, 30 years from now, it costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally. So if you're like me, and you probably are, as you wouldn't come to a financial workshop like this, at some point, you decide to get serious about this money thing. I got to learn about it and understand it, so you read a few books or watch a few shows or go to a few lectures, and they all tell you the same thing I told you. We're blowing $20 a day, we got to quit it. But they always go too far. They say things like, you can never go to Starbucks again the rest of your life, and you can never go out to eat again the rest of your life, and don't send your kids to college, and don't buy new cars, and don't take vacations, and how many of you know we're not very good at that in America? That sacrifice thing, right? It is way too harsh, and even though people have the best intentions, they give up after about 2 or 3 weeks. It's way too harsh. Nobody would want to live a life like that. So what we recommend is, what if we just cut back a little bit? What if we went to Starbucks 1 time less a week? What if we went out to eat 1 time less a week, and we could save $5 a day? Could it make an impact on our lives? So he said $5 a day, every day of our life for 40 years. Well, I was 26 at the time, so that would have made me 66. So it wasn't a get-rich-quick program, more of a get-rich-eventually program. And we recognize get-rich-eventually is not very glamorous, right? We also found out it's better than never getting there at all. Would you agree with that too? So many people in our country are trying to get rich quick. They dig themselves into a hole over and over and over. Pretty soon they're so far in the hole they'll never get out, they'll never reach their goals. How many of you remember the story of the tortoise and the hare? Anybody remember that story? Who wins the race almost every time?
Tortoise.
The turtle, right? If you research wealth accumulation in America, you'll identify that 94% of the people in America who reach financial independence and wealth are turtles. The problem is the media only tells us about the rabbits. So everybody thinks they're going to invent the next Google or the next Microsoft or the next Facebook and become billionaires overnight. But the reality is that's not going to happen to most of us. Most of us are going to have to do this over a period of time. So $5 a day for 40 years, and he said if we could average 10% on that money over 40 years. Now when I say 10% today in today's environment, the room usually divides in half immediately. And half the room says, where in the world can you get 10% today? That's unheard of, that's impossible, we're not gonna do that, this seems like blue sky and smoke and mirrors. The other half says, I got 20% on my portfolio last year, why would I reduce it to 10? So the reality is it's both those things, and what we're talking about, our company, is averages over a period of time. If you want 10% next year, that is speculation, that's like gambling. But over a period of 15 years, you'll identify if you research the market, 10% is actually a very conservative rate of return over a period of time like that. So he said if we just did $5 a day for 40 to 10%, and if that's all you did after tonight, if you walked out of this room right now and just did this, you will end up with $1 million. Imagine that, $5 a day turns you into a millionaire. It's so simple. The good news about that presentation is every single one of us can do that. Wealth accumulation is not just for the wealthy. It's for every single person that will learn the principles, apply those principles. Most importantly though, we got to give ourselves a little bit of time. Well, when the guy showed this at the seminar that I went to, I got super excited because all my life I wanted to be a millionaire. Since I was 3 years old, I didn't know what it meant, but I wanted to be one for sure. Because you watch the TV and you watch movies and the millionaires. As I got older, I really wanted to become a millionaire. But 5 years out of college, I'd already had 8 jobs, $30,000 in debt, living paycheck to paycheck. I was not well on my way to becoming a millionaire. And I always wondered to myself, how does somebody like me become a millionaire? I was never going to be a rock star or a movie star. I was not going to go back to school and be a doctor or a lawyer. I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. So how does the average person become a millionaire? And this was the answer, and anybody could do that. So I got super excited. But then I did the weirdest thing I've ever done in my life. I did the same thing that every one of my clients does to me. For some reason, the minute he said I had to save $5 a day, in my head, I multiplied that times 30. Why would I multiply it times 30? What does 30 represent?
The month?
Days in a month. Don't you think of money and months in the same context? House payments, car payments, rent, bills, everything's monthly. Well, 5 times 30 is $150 a month. I looked at Jim, that was the guy giving the seminar. I said, Jim, there is no way on the face of the earth I could save $150 a month. That is completely out of my budget. So isn't that interesting that just 30 seconds ago, I could do $5 a day, but 30 seconds later, I can't do $150 a month, and it's the exact same thing, isn't it? You know what that is? That's emotion, not logic. One of the first things we teach our clients when they start to work with us, the day you start to treat your money mathematically and scientifically is the day you win the money game. You continue to treat your money emotionally, you are virtually guaranteed to lose the money game. And guess how most of us treat our money? Please don't answer all at once like that. That hurts. How do we treat our money?
Emotionally.
That's right. You know why we do that? Because we're human beings. How many human beings do I have tonight? Can I see those hands? We have a handful of avatars right over here on this side. Okay? We're all emotional about a lot of stuff, but we are super emotional about money. And I looked at Jim and I said, Jim, that's great. Math, science, emotion, logic, I don't care. I still don't have $150 a month. And he said, well, Mike, in our company, that's not our problem. Because he said, in our company, we have a program called our funnel program. And what we do is we look at every single thing in your financial household. We may look at all of your insurance policies, look at your taxes and your tax return, look at your mortgage, your savings habit, do you have debt, your spending habits, your 401ks, your IRAs, anything and everything that has to do with money. We run it through a very simple analysis that we call the funnel. And what we've identified over 44 years is when somebody works with us, we generally save them $250 a month or more. So after working with us, they still own all these things, but now they're paying $250 a month less for them. And if we just freed up $250 a month, guess what we just found? The $150 a month we need to finance $1 million retirement plan without one penny coming out of your pocket. How many of you have ever heard of refinancing a mortgage? Heard of that? We all have, right? Why do we refinance a mortgage? It lowers the interest rate. If it lowers the interest rate, it lowers the payment. So you still have a mortgage, you're paying less for it, more money in your pocket, right? What this gentleman did for me and what we've done for hundreds of thousands of people, we call this refinancing your finances. It's actually possible to refinance your insurance policies and refinance your tax return. It's actually possible to refinance your 401ks and your IRAs. Almost every one of us in America are misappropriating money in our household budgets. And 99% of the time we don't even know we're doing it because we've never been educated on how some of these things work. Our job is to come in, find that misappropriated or that hidden money, free it up, and get it working for you instead of these companies that quite frankly take advantage of us not knowing how they work. 80% of the people that work with us never have to come up with one penny. It's already there. Just by moving money around, we can free up enough money to start a saving retirement program. So once we find the money, the next thing we have to do is grow your money. And we're going to grow it using a tool you've all heard of your whole life, but very few people really understand it. And that tool is compound interest. Now those are two words you've probably heard your whole life. Maybe since you were 4 or 5 or 6 years old, and grandma and grandpa go down to the bank, take you down to the bank and open up your first savings account. And then they give you the lecture. You have money in the bank, you get interest on the money, and you get interest on the interest. We've all done that, right? We all know that part. What most people don't know is compound interest is built on a mathematical equation. So isn't that interesting? What did I say a minute ago? Treat your money mathematically and scientifically, we win the money game. How in the world we go to school in this country for 12 and 16 years to get our degrees, and we are never taught the mathematical formula for the most powerful financial principle in the world. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you just wonder if they just want us to all be broke forever. Because it's such a simple tool that if we would have learned this early in our lives, we would have made way better mistakes. That mathematical equation is called the rule of 72. And here's basically how the rule of 72 works. If you divide your interest rate into the number 72, it'll tell you how many years it takes for your money to double by itself. So as an example, if I have $1 at 1%, 1% goes into 72, 72 times, so it's going to take 72 years for your $1 to turn to $2. Here's free advice after 44 years in the industry. Highly recommend you stay away from 1% investments, right? How many 72-year periods do you have in your life? Rating for one right now. Now I'll share with you the most shocking thing you'll hear all night long in this presentation, okay? Currently in America, if you take all the 401ks, all the IRAs, all the pension plans, all the savings accounts at banks, all the retirement accounts across the board, over 50% of that money in America today is sitting in accounts earning 1% interest or less. Trillions and trillions of dollars. And you think to yourself, why in the world are people doing that? So we have to go back in time a little bit. Go back to 2001, we had what was called the dot-com implosion. When the dot-com industry imploded, the stock market went down 50%. So if you had money in the market during that time period, or your 401k, it literally went down 50% overnight. Good news is it bounced right back. It didn't scare people. But then 2008, 2009 rolled around, and we had the mortgage crisis, and the market went down 63%. So now we'd lost half our money twice in 6.5 years. When that happened, the majority of people in America took some of their money or all their money and moved it out of risk, out of the market, and put it into safety, into safe money accounts. Still sitting there today, 10, 12, 15 years later, earning 1% interest or less. There are so many more variables and so many things they could have done. It's just that most people are not exposed to them. We're going to share some of that with you tonight. Well, let's take a look at how important it is to understand interest rates. So we're going to look at triplets tonight that are 29 years old. Their grandfather passes away and leaves them each $5,000 cash with one simple rule. They have to find a saving or retirement account, and they have to lump sum the $5,000 in there. Then they can't touch it. They can't add to it. They can't take from it. Just let it grow and accumulate. See which one of them ends up with the most money at retirement. The first brother here is a typical middle American. So let's think about this. He's a typical middle American with a small amount of money. He's got to go deposit it somewhere. Where is he most likely going to go? He's going to go to a bank. And why would he go to a bank?
Mom and dad.
Safe's the number one answer every night. Okay, safe, convenient, familiar. Here's another reason he goes to a bank. That's where mom and dad went, and that's where grandma and grandpa went, right? How many of you know the definition of doing the same thing over and over but expecting a different result? You know what that is? Insanity. If your parents didn't end up with any money and you're doing what your parents are doing, we got a problem. Here's the number one reason he'd go to a bank. If he's a typical middle American, in his mind, that's not enough money to work with a financial representative. And if you're talking about Merrill Lynch or Schwab, you're absolutely right. You couldn't even get in the door. But our company was specifically designed for that group of people. The very same thing that you can invest in at Merrill Lynch and Schwab with $1 million, we can do the same things with $100 and $1,000. There's many, many more people out there with $100 and $1,000, but they need to have a channel to be able to invest and put that in there. That's what our company was built around, and that's what we do for people. But let's say he runs off to the bank anyway and gets 4% today, which he actually could get 4% at a bank today. 4 goes into the rule 72, 18 times. The money's going to double every 18 years. So at 47, it doubled to 10,000. 18 years later, at 65, it's doubled to $20,000. He put in 5,000. He never touches it. He pulls out 20,000. It's the magic of compound interest. Second brother comes to our seminar and learns that he might be able to get 8% interest, guaranteed. And somebody in the audience says, wait a minute, did he say guaranteed? And I'm like, yep, 8% guaranteed. Every night people say to me, I've never heard of anything like that. Well, that's why you're invited tonight. This is where we learn about programs and concepts that actually exist like this. It's just that most people are never exposed to them. But this is the part of the presentation when I went that I learned I didn't know near as much about compound interest as I thought I did. So remember I told you since 3 years old I always wanted to be a millionaire, right? Remember that? Mm-hmm. So since the beginning of time when I could read, I've been reading every book I could get my hands on how to get rich. How to get rich in real estate, the stock market, oil and gas, gold and silver. So by the time I went to my seminar, I knew everything about money. I already knew all this, okay? I didn't have any money, but I knew it all, okay? And this guy could tell, so I'm a smarty pants, and he says to me, Mike, I'm gonna test you. He said, we're gonna put 5,000 in both accounts. We're gonna go to age 65 in both accounts. The only thing we're gonna do is double the interest rate from 4 to 8. That's all we're gonna do. So he said, Mike, give me your best guess where we're gonna end up there, 65. I said, well, Jim, I've been out of college for 5 years, but that's the easiest math problem in the world. When you double the interest rate, you double the return. It'll be $40,000. I was so proud of myself because I got this financial guy in front of everybody in the room. And guess what? I was way off. You go to work tomorrow and show this to 10 people, I guarantee you 8 out of 10 people will say 40,000 just like me because we've never been educated on how this works and the power of it. Watch what happens. 8% goes in the rule of 72 9 times. The money's going to double every 9 years. So at 38, it's 10,000. At 47, it's 20. At 56, he doubles his brother, but he gets to double one more time. That's where the word compound comes in, and he ends up with $80,000. So big difference or little difference between 20,000 and 80,000?
Huge difference.
That didn't sound very big to me. Okay, so let's think about it differently. Okay, how many of you have a job or earn any money? Okay. About 4 of you, that's awesome. Okay, so welcome to free dinner, everybody. So soon, at some point we had jobs and earn money. Let's go to see the boss tomorrow. You walk in the boss's office and the boss says, you know, you did such a good job this year, we're gonna give you a raise. We're either gonna give you a $20,000 year raise or an $80,000 year raise. Now is that big or little?
Big.
Yeah, see, when you can relate to it personally, it makes a difference, doesn't it? If you don't think it's a big difference, add a 0 to both of those numbers, and you're 65. 200,000 or 800,000. Is that a lifestyle difference?
Yeah.
And the only thing I had to do to make that happen was go from 4 to 8. I didn't have to go from 4 to 24. And that is the single biggest myth that hurts the middle America market with their saving and investment dollars. The thought that they have to have these wildly high, exaggerated, risky interest rates to win. The reality, when you research wealth accumulation in America, is the vast majority of wealth has been created between 8 and 9%. You literally almost never have to risk your money. You just have to give yourself time. Third brother believes 12% is a possibility. It doubles every 6 years. Carry that out to 65, $320,000. Big difference or little difference?
Big. Big difference.
Let's not get carried away here.
With a capital B.
No more drinks for this table. So enormous difference, and here again we only had to go from 4 to 12, not from 4 to 40. What we're saying here is it pays off to pay attention to your interest rates. And even moving your money for 1 or 2% at a time, which seems like a hassle sometimes, actually is well worth it over the long haul when you see the returns. So we find the money, we grow the money. Now what we need to do is protect your money. Number one thing we need to protect your money from is not the stock market. Number one thing we need to protect your money from is taxes. The single biggest difference between where wealthy people end up, where middle Americans end up, is their ability to reduce their tax liabilities. The rich do not get richer because they have better investments or better advisors. We have access to all that. The rich get richer primarily because they save more money than we save. And one of the reasons they save more than us is they pay less in taxes than we do. Now, some people carry it to an extreme, and they think that rich people pay no taxes at all. Nothing could be further from the truth. They carry the largest tax burden in our country by far. But on a percentage of adjusted gross income, the average wealthy person is paying about 10% less than the average middle American. So if they're paying 10% less in taxes, what does that leave over? 10% more to save and invest. Remember the funnel? This is actually where we find the most money in the funnel for our clients. I'll give you an example of how this works. So I told you that we have some 600,000 clients under management, but I personally have 2,000 clients. In my 44 years, I've worked with 2,000 people. Almost all of them middle Americans and upper middle Americans. But a handful of them, 3 or 4 of them, are multimillionaires and huge millionaires. 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. Like I said, 275 million. So these people, I can tell you the difference between those clients and my other clients. These people have a tax advisor, a tax attorney, a tax accountant, whatever it takes, however many people it takes to pay the least amount of taxes possible. So that's who the wealthy have to help them with their taxes. Who do we have in middle America to help us with our taxes?
TurboTax.
Yeah, or Asian R Block, right? And you got to understand there's nothing wrong with those companies. They serve a purpose. But they are tax preparers, not wealth advisors. So we get left out of the entire educational loop about how the tax code works. And here's something about the tax code, whether you love it or hate it, that's super fair. Whether you're minimum wage or middle America or multimillionaire, it's the same exact tax code. So if the wealthy can figure out how to pay 10% less in taxes, guess who else can? We can if somebody teaches us how. See, it's an education problem. I'm going to show you an example of how critical it is to protect your money from taxes. I'm going to go see Mr. and Mrs. Millionaire tonight and Mr. and Mrs. Middle America. I'm going to offer them the exact same saving and retirement program. I'm not offering a good one to the millionaires and an average one to middle America. They get the same deal. I go to the millionaires first and I say, if you give me $1 tonight, I promise to double it every year for 20 years. So they give me $1. At the end of the first year, it doubles to 2. Next year, it doubles to 4. Then 8, 16, 32, 64. You've probably seen something like this. Let's see where we end up in 20 years. $1,048,000. Now, before I move on, let me ask you a question. If we could really do this, how many of you would have $1 tonight? How many of you would have lots of dollars? Yeah. Remember, you raise your hand because later you're going to tell me you don't have any money. Okay? Here's the bottom line. We obviously can't do this. We don't offer 100% return on investment. This is an example. But you'll notice that something's happening here. It's actually what's not happening. There's no money coming out anywhere. Look at the top. When $2 doubles to 4, the difference between 2 and 4 is 2. That's called earnings. What do we normally pay on earnings in this country?
Taxes.
So we're not paying any taxes here. This is called a tax deferred or a tax protected account. Those are words we've all heard our whole life too. This is something less than 1 in 1,000 people really understand. I promise you in 30 seconds you will clearly understand the significance of protecting your money from taxes for the rest of your life. Because now we're going to go see those middle Americans. I'm going to offer them the exact same thing. You give me $1 tonight, I promise to double it every year for 20 years. And they look at me and they say, well, Mike, that's a really nice offer. But Mom and Dad never had an advisor, Grandma and Grandpa never had one. They did okay, so we're just going to do it ourselves. So if they have $1 and they've got to go put it in somewhere, where are they going to go? Right back to the bank. If you know anything about savings accounts at banks, most of them are taxable every single year. So here's what's going to happen to the middle Americans, and this is what's happened to them for the last 250 years in our country. They put their $1 into the bank and it doubles to 2. The difference between 1 and 2 is 1. Typical middle American will pay 28 cents on the dollar for tax inside of a savings account, interest like this. So at the end of the year, we don't really end up with $2. We had to pay 28 cents in taxes. So we really end up with $1.72. Everybody see how I did that? We double it, tax it, net it down. So now we double that to $3.44. We're going to tax the earnings again. It drops down to $2.96. And we're going to double it and tax it and double it and tax it and double it and tax it for 20 years, just like we did over here. So I wonder what we're going to end up with over here. Over here we ended up with $1 million. I wonder what it'll be on that side. And I don't want you to say a number out loud, but I want everybody to do this one. Because if you only take one thing home from the seminar, this whole seminar, this is the one thing to take home. It makes the most profound difference where you end up. If we double this and tax it every year for 20 years, put a number in your head what you think that's going to be, okay? The person who gets closest to this tonight will get free dinner at the end, okay? Well, if you're like most people, you probably guess between 200,000 and 500,000, somewhere in that range, between 200, and 200,000 would be close, but not super close. If we double it, tax it every year for 20 years, it's $51,353. Big difference or little difference?
Huge.
Got a $1 million difference, and you got to remember, this is not a good account and a bad account. These are identical accounts, one simply protected from taxes. I'm going to tell you a little secret I learned from my mentor 44 years ago. He said, Mike, if you want to be rich, you have to do the things that rich people do, not the things that broke people do. Here's something that's very interesting about people who have lots of money. They pay their tax advisors 10 times more money than they pay their financial advisors. It's that important. Protecting your money from taxes is more important than any investment choice you'll ever make. Now, if you can do both of them, that's when you really win the money game. Pick the right things to invest in, but protect it from taxes. So we found the money, we protect the money, we grow the money, we do all these things. So this lady comes to our seminar, and she's very much representative of the people who come to our workshops. She has money. She just doesn't know what to do with it today. She thinks, well, I can go to the bank, but I can get 3 or 4%, but inflation's 3 or 4%, and they're going to tax me. And so that doesn't seem like a really wise choice. And so she says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get back in the market. But now she can't sleep at night. She can't sleep at night because 4 years ago, her 401k was $240,000. 1 year later, it dropped to $180,000. Then it bounced right back to $240,000, and it's about $260,000 right now. And she thinks to herself, where's that going to be when I'm 65? When I'm ready to retire and I need that money, where's that going to be? And all she hears in the media today is that we're due for a big correction and it's going to go down 50%. Anybody hearing that kind of stuff all the time? That's all we hear all the time. So she thinks to herself, isn't there anything besides ultimate safety of a bank and ultimate risk of the stock market? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are actually multiple things in there, but I'm going to share with you one tonight that is the #1 product marketed in America as an alternative to the stock market. It gives us the chance to still earn reasonable interest rates, but it can't lose any money, and they are called indexed accounts. And this is not to be confused with an indexed fund. An indexed fund is still a stock market account. It is still a mutual fund. An indexed account is basically a savings account or an alternative to the market. But here's what the indexed accounts do. They have the upside potential of the market, but they have absolutely no downside risk. So here's exactly how it works. When the market goes up, you go up with it. When the market goes down, you stay up here. Now here's an interesting thing about indexed accounts. Literally, on an average, about 3 million people a month move their money in their 401ks from the stock market into indexed accounts. And this has been going on for 25 years, and yet most people still haven't heard about it. They still haven't heard much about it, don't know much about it. So I'm going to do 3 things for you tonight. I'm going to define it for you, I'll describe it for you, but then I'm going to show you actual case study of what's happened to our money in our 401ks and our retirement accounts for the last 25 years. So an index account is nothing more than a savings account. It is not an investment account. It's a savings account. It's an alternative to the stock market. So the client gives us their money and we put it into a holding account. This money is held by some of the largest financial institutions in the world, literally 200, 300, 400-year-old companies with billions and trillions of dollars of assets, and in most cases, the highest ratings in the world. This is the safest, literally the safest money in the world right now. So the client puts their money into that account, and then every year we credit that account based on the performance of a stock index. That's why it's called an indexed account. I'm going to use the S&P 500 tonight. That is a stock index. Now, I could use any index I want to. NASDAQ, I can use the Dow, I can use foreign indices. It doesn't matter because your money never ever goes in the stock market. We're simply using it as a measuring device. So I'll give an example of how this works. How many of you know how a savings account at a bank works? Anybody know how it works? You walk in and give them money, they give you an interest rate back, right? When a bank declares an interest rate on a savings account, they have to take care of 2 people, themselves and you. Who do they take care of first? Themselves. And whatever's left over, that's what we get. That's the board of directors of a bank determining your future with your money. What if we took it out of the board of directors' hands? What if the bank had to credit your savings account every year based on what the stock market did? So if the market went up 8%, they have to give you 8% on your savings account. That would be a lot more fun, wouldn't you agree? Yes. Okay. The next year the market only goes up 4%. Well, that year they can only give you 4% on your savings account. The third year the market goes down 4%. And this is why millions of people still have their money in bank accounts. How much money do you lose in a bank account when the stock market goes down? 0. You can't lose money, right? It's in the bank. So basically what an index account does, When the market goes up, you will go up with it. When the market goes down, you get zeros. Let's take a look at a couple of years just so you can see how it works. Let's say the first year the market goes up 10%. If the market goes up 10% at the end of the year, we come over to your account and credit it 10%. So let's go back to my definition. When the market goes up, we go up with it. Is that what happened? That's exactly what happened. Next year the market goes down 10%. Is it possible for the market to go up 10% one year and down 10% the next year? Yeah, how about every other week, right? This is the volatility that everybody's so concerned with right now. Now I'll show you why this became the #1 marketed program over the last 25 years. Because when the industry created it, they put a floor on this product, guaranteeing contractually it could never be credited below 0% interest. That means in a year, even if the market went down 99%, the worst that can happen to your account is you get credited to zero that year. You can never lose money in an index account based on market performance. So people, when they first see that, they're like, wow, that's awesome, I can never lose money. And then they look at it again and like, wait a minute. They say, Mike, are you trying to sell me something that pays 0% interest? Let me ask you a question. 3 years ago, the market went down 30%. Could I interest you in zero that year?
Yes.
See, last time I checked, zero is better than any minus at all. Would you agree?
Yes.
Sometimes we pay so much attention to the upside, we don't think about protecting ourselves from the downside. Third year, the market goes up 15%. Well, if you have a floor on the product, then you might also have a what? Ceiling. This is what makes it not too good to be true. A ceiling's hovered around 10% now for the last 25 years or so. So at the end of the year, if the market went up 15, it would bounce into that 10% ceiling. At the end of the year, our client would get a 10% interest rate. So some years, our clients don't get 100% of the upside. Most of our clients today are willing to trade a little tiny bit of their upside to never ever have a downside again, ever again the rest of their life. And some of you might feel the same way. Like I said, this is why literally millions of people rolling their 401ks into these accounts. So I'm going to take a look now at a hypothetical example and show you how it works. I'll show you a real case study in a minute, but I just want you to see hypothetically how it works. Let's say tonight you have $100,000 and it's all in the market. Let's say it's in your 401k or wherever, IRAs, whatever, and you're nervous. You want to compare leaving it in the market versus an index account. First thing I want to point out is we're not anti-stock market. We are pro-balanced portfolio. You should have things across the board for sure, especially depending on your age and things like that. Our partner is a registered investment advisory firm that handles all the risk and stock market side of the portfolio for our clients. What I'm talking about tonight is the money you can't afford to lose, your safe money. So you have $100,000, you want to compare leaving it in the market versus an index account. Let's say in the first year, the market goes down 10%. If the market went down 10%, what happens to the index account? Anybody remember? It is zero, remember? Second year, the market goes down 10 again, and we get another zero. So far, not very glamorous. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Is it more glamorous than losing 20%?
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes we focus so much on what products can do, we don't pay much attention to what they can't do. An index account can never do that. That's why we call it sleep insurance. Because you can lay your head on the pillow every night and know you will never, ever lose a penny in an index account due to market performance. Third year, the market goes up 10%. Interesting thing about index accounts is they're only measured in 12-month increments. They don't have to make up for the past. So in this 10 months, it went up 10% from a starting point there. The index account goes up 10. Fourth year, the market goes down 10 again. Now I'll show you really why this is the #1 product marketed. Because not only can you never lose the money you put in, you can also now never lose the money you gain. It ratchets up. This becomes your new guaranteed principal. Even though the market goes down 10, you get a zero at that level. Then the fifth year, the market rebounds again and goes up 10. We only measure that 12 months. It went up 10. From the starting point there, we go up 10. If that was your 100,000 5 years ago, which one of those two accounts do you wish your money would have been in? Obviously the top one, right? And actually, the more volatile the market is, the better off an index account does. The up and down of the market, because index accounts can't go down, they can only go up and sideways, up and sideways. And as the market's going up and down, it's climbing the stairs. Well, obviously, this is just an example. We can draw dots and lines and make anything look good, right? So how about looking at a real case study? Would you really like to see what's happened to our money? This is what's happened for the last 25 years. I'm going to take your $100,000 and put it on the S&P 500. This is your $100,000. The S&P 500 from the January 1, 2000 to the end of 2025. The blue line is the S&P 500. And you can see the volatility. This is 2000, 2001, the dot-com implosion. This is 2008. in 2009 with the mortgage crisis. We had a teeny tiny blip in 2016. Good news is though, if you hung in there, like they tell us to do, hang in there, and just stay in it, you'd now be at $400,000, $401,000. So you put in $100,000, now you have 400. It did exactly what we're told, right? The index account is the red line. And you can see it didn't go up and down, so you didn't lose any sleep when the market went down 50% here. You didn't jump out of a skyscraper when it went down 63% here, right? And so basically you ended up almost exactly the same, $6,000 short of the market potential without losing any sleep for that same 25-year period of time. Except I left one thing out. If the blue line is an S&P 500 account, that means it's a brokerage account. And if it's a brokerage account, that means you're working with a broker. And that means you're probably paying a fee.
Fee.
The average fee in America today is 2% a year. I'm only going to take 1% out, just one. So the green line is the same exact S&P 500 taking 1% out a year for the broker fee. So you don't really end up at 401, you end up at 322. So the index account actually outperformed the S&P 500 in this 25-year period of time by $70,000. And you never lost 1 minute of sleep through that time, 25-year period of time. This is a super powerful program for people, especially people that are at a point where they can't afford to lose any more money and just want to know what's happening with their accounts. Almost everything I talked about tonight, like the tax deferred or tax protected accounts and the things like that, the guaranteed 8% interest, those are all indexed accounts that I talked about earlier. We would never recommend you put all of your money into one place. We're never saying you should take all your money and put it into an indexed account. That would never make any sense. We believe in diversified portfolio. But this is a super great place, one of our best recommendations, especially for people who maybe have their money in 1 or 2% interest right now, because there's no reason to do that when 6, 7, and 8 is absolutely available to everybody. Another great thing about index accounts is they fulfill every step of the way of building a solid retirement account. If you build a retirement account perfectly or properly, you have to start with a foundation. It's very similar to building a house. If you were building a new house next week, what's the first part of the house you build?
The basement.
Foundation. Is it the most glamorous part of your house?
No.
No, and neither is it in your financial plan. But is it the most essential part of your house?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is your savings accounts, your emergency savings accounts, your mortgage, maybe your 401ks, things like that. Eventually, we're going to get to an accumulation stage where we try to earn a little bit higher interest rates and grow our money a little faster. But ultimately, we're going to get to a stage called distribution. This is how the money comes out. And this is what we specialize in. Because if you do this right, and you do it properly, and you stay with it long term, by the time you're ready to retire, a portion of, or maybe in some cases all of an indexed account can be distributed out completely tax-free. So it acts just like a Roth IRA, only on steroids. Because a Roth IRA has limitations, right? You can only put in so much money, you can't take it out to your 59 and a half, all those types of things. If you make too much money, you can't even have one. But an index account doesn't work that way. It works exactly the same. Gross tax deferred comes out tax-free, but has none of those limitations. It's completely liquid, take it out anytime you need it, and it's a powerful tax-free distribution plan. Not all index accounts do that, but a lot of them do. So we can give you more information about index accounts while you're eating. They're gonna bring the food in here in just a minute, and we're gonna all eat together. But before we do that, I wanna finish with a couple of stories tonight. Because I think stories are a better representation than presentations, for sure. Okay, something that people can relate to better. Because first of all I've done tonight so far is help you get rich and famous and live happily ever after, right? How many of you know life doesn't always work that way? You know that? How many of you know life works this way sometimes? How many of you have ever run into a few hurdles in your life? Anybody run into a hurdle or two? Anybody ever been knocked down to your knees once or twice and had some challenges? So I'm going to paint a scenario for you that's going to happen to 80% of us in the room. If you're part of the 20%, you got to count your blessings. Okay, but for 80% of it, this is a scenario that's happening to everybody in America today. So let's say you do everything right after tonight. You save money, you invest money, you protect it from taxes, and by the time you're ready to retire, you have a big, giant pile of money and you feel great. And then for 80% of us in the room, somebody in our lives will get sick. It'll either be our spouse, or it'll be ourselves, or it'll be parents going into assisted living, or a child getting sick. But this happens to 80% of people in America. And this is the most devastating thing that happens to our retirement plans. We spend 40 years building a retirement plan. When somebody has a critical illness like a cancer or a stroke or a heart attack, it takes 2 years to spend every penny in that account. So we end up with no money. So here's the scenario. We get sick or somebody gets sick, we drain our savings, then we drain our retirement account, then we drain the equity out of our house, then we sell our house. And if we're still alive, we're living with our kids, and we're broke, and it's not the way we would end the book, right? That's not the chapter of the book we want to write. So what if we had a way that if that happens, and it's going to happen to the majority of us, we never have to touch our savings, never have to touch our retirement account, never touch our house, and when we get well, we still have all our money in our house. That's the better ending to the story, and we can do that. But in order to do it, we have to use a tool. It's a tool you've all heard of your whole life, but most people don't like it very much, and that tool is insurance. How many of you agree most of us don't like insurance very much? You agree with that? Yeah, we don't like thinking about it, we don't like talking about it, we don't like paying for it. We hardly like anything about insurance at all. And if there's one kind of insurance we really don't like, it's life insurance, right? Here's why we don't like life insurance. We don't think we're gonna die. The person next to you might die, but it's not gonna be me. That's how we feel, right? Yeah, you really shouldn't look at each other that way, it's creepy. Right? But let's just, if you don't like life insurance, I know exactly how you feel. I was 26 when I started doing that, remember? When I started doing this, remember? I'd never seen anybody die early, so life insurance seemed like the biggest waste of money in the world to me. I love showing people how to invest money, accumulate money, do all these things, but my managers kept saying, you gotta sell them life insurance because it's their estate plan until they have an estate and blah, blah, blah. I didn't care, I didn't like it. And then I had a day that changed my life forever. I was actually in Kansas City. This is where I started my practice 44 years ago. I was working with a young couple, 34-year-old husband, 34-year-old wife. They had 4 children at the time, all under 8 years old, little tiny toddlers. He was making $80,000 a year. She was not working outside of the home. She's raising those 4 children. And somehow, some way, they owed $400,000 on a house. He was a custom home builder, and he got stuck in a house he couldn't sell. If you've ever known anybody in that situation, it's devastating. They were literally 6 months away from bankruptcy. So by the time I got to them, they had nothing left to run through the funnel. They had gotten rid of everything. They were down to their last penny. So I really didn't know how I was going to help him. I'm getting ready to leave, and he said, wait a minute. He said, there is one last thing we could run through the funnel. I completely forgot. He said, 13 years ago, I graduated from college. My best friend graduated at the same time, and he went to work for an insurance company. And he sold me this life insurance policy I've been paying on for 13 years. So he ran and got it, and here's what we discovered. He was paying $84 a month for that life insurance policy. And for $84 a month, here's the coverage that he had. It was a $25,000 policy on himself. He had none on his wife, he had none on his kids, but it was a kind that built a savings account inside of it. You're probably familiar with that. Part of it goes to insurance, part of it goes to savings. So after paying $84 a month, that's $1,000 a year for 40 years. That means he was going to pay in $40,000. That company was going to give him $15,000 back at retirement time. Now, how many of you here tonight are not certified financial planners? Anybody not one? How many of you know you don't have to be a certified financial planner to know that's kind of a stinker, right? And I won't tell you what company it was with, but they were in good hands, okay? So, here's the good news. Even the good hands people don't sell anything. Okay, so it's like a good neighbor. Okay, is that better? Okay, so here's the good news. Even those companies don't sell anything like this anymore. The industry has been completely revolutionized over the last 20 or 30 years. The problem is 70% of Americans who have a life insurance policy have one that looks a lot like that. Because in America, when you buy your first policy, it's like a license to never ever have to talk to another insurance agent again the rest of your life. So you stuff it in a drawer or stuff it in a file cabinet and you forget about it. But these are really, really like rotary phones. They just don't, they're not effective anymore. So let's show you what I did. I ran his $84 through the funnel, and all I needed was $60. I didn't even need the whole $84. To show you how much the industry has changed, for $60, here's the coverage I put on the family. $500,000 on him, $250,000 on his wife, $5,000 on all 4 children. Part of it was term, part of it was permanent. We have a big problem in America today where more people are dying without life insurance than ever before in American history. And that's because they're only buying term. And if you don't die in the term, you die without life insurance. So we believe you have to have both kinds. So we did both kinds here. So if I walked out of that house that minute, did I do that family a favor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Big favor or little favor?
Big favor.
Huge favor. And I saved them money on insurance. Who doesn't want to save money on insurance, right? But I didn't come over to sell insurance. I came over to show them how to build a retirement plan. Most of us are not going to die early. It's a fact of life. I wanted to show them how to start saving money. If you subtract 60 from 84, it leaves over $24 a month. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, does it? But remember, $5 a day didn't seem like a lot either. We took the original money out of this account, brought it down, added $24 a month for the next 40 years, and if all we earn is 8%, they end up with $250,000 completely tax-free at retirement. So whether, it's just $250,000, by the way, better than $15,000.
Yes.
Yeah, little or a lot.
A lot.
So whether he lives or whether he dies, he's better off doing business with me. Would you agree?
Yes.
How much did it cost him to do business with me?
Nothing.
0. 84 when I walked in, 84 when I walked
Yeah, I was
out.
gonna say.
We simply refinanced his life insurance policy, and look what we did for that family. And we can refinance health insurance and homeowners insurance and car insurance and 401ks and IRAs and mortgages and anything and everything that has to do with money. Find this misappropriated money, and like I said, get it working for you like I got it working for this family. Well, I wish I could tell you that after I shared this with the family, they were jumping up and down and hugging me and screaming, "I'm so excited, you're a hero of our family. We're gonna buy you Christmas presents and birthday presents. You're the guy," right? But how do people feel about people who sell insurance? This guy was the meanest, rudest client I ever had in my life. And I'm telling the truth, he was horrible. And I gotta cut him some slack because he's gonna file bankruptcy like in 6 months, so he was really stressed out. But he looked at me and he said, "Mike, let me tell you something. We don't understand this stuff. We don't care about it. We don't like it." And he said, "As a matter of fact, we don't like you." He said, "But I am gonna buy it." And I thought, that's weird. I didn't say it, but I thought, okay? Here's why he was gonna buy it. I was training his best friend to be a new agent in my company. That's how we got the appointment. He said, "I see my best friend here is trying to start a new business. I want to help him out. I got to buy insurance from somebody, so I might as well buy it from him." He said, "But we have a problem." I said, "Really, what's that?" Lifted up his hand like this and tapped his watch. The problem is, our favorite TV show comes on in 2 minutes. So if you can write this application up in 2 minutes or less, I'll give you a check. You get out of here. I never want to see you again the rest of my life. Well, 2 minutes, I think you'd all agree that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I have some pride. You know what I did? I wrote as fast as I could. I only had 2 minutes. Almost got the paper on fire. 2 minutes later, he's escorting me across the threshold of his front door. I have a check in my hand. And just as I crossed the threshold of the front door, I heard the theme song for Survivor come on. Can you believe that? Survivor was more important to this guy than his whole family's financial future. I thought to myself right at that minute, I thought, you know, if it would have been Dancing with the Stars, I understand. There's something wrong with that story, right? Well, I wish that's the end of the story, but it's not the end of the story. 2 weeks later, his wife called me on the phone and she goes, "Hey, Mike, I need to see you tomorrow." I'm like, "Oh no, they're gonna cancel. They want their money back." I'm just devastated. She goes, "No, that's not why I need to see you tomorrow." She goes, "I need to see you tomorrow because my husband died today." 2 weeks after he said he never wanted to see me again the rest of his life. Unfortunately, he got his wish. He was a construction worker, like I said, and every Friday night after construction work, him and his buddy went out on this lake fishing. So he's in a small boat on a small lake right outside of Kansas City. His aorta blew up in his chest. He died instantly in the boat. No pre-existing conditions, no warning signs. To this day, they have no idea what happened. But it doesn't matter if they figure it out. He's still going to be gone. And he left behind a wife who doesn't work, 4 children under 8 years old, no more $80,000 a year paycheck. She still owes $400,000 on that house. If I hadn't gone over to that house and let him treat me the way he treated me, some guy from another company would have given her a check for $25,000. What would that have done for that family?
Nothing.
Maybe pay for the funeral, right? Instead, 2 weeks later, I walked into that house and handed her a check for $500,000. They got to stay in the house. She started 4 college education programs. She got her feet on the ground. She got her head together. We saved that family's life. And we have saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of families over 44 years simply by refinancing their finances and getting their money in order and getting it work for them. Well, like I said, this is kind of the Rotaphone and smartphone. Let me show you the real smartphone of the insurance industry. Remember I talked about how do we protect our savings, how do we protect our retirement account, how do we protect our house if we get sick? We can do that with the right kind of insurance. And the right kind of insurance is life insurance with what are called living benefits. This allows us to access the death benefit of a policy without having to die. Imagine that, life insurance you don't have to die to get. So if you have a critical illness like a heart attack or a stroke or a cancer, we can access up to 90% of that death benefit without you dying. So remember he had $500,000. If he hadn't died in that boat, but he couldn't, let's say he couldn't work for the next 2 years, we'd have been able to access $400,000 or so for him to rehabilitate and get his feet on the ground, and then they don't lose everything. The most profound story I can share with you in the history of my career, 44 years, is a living benefit story. A few years ago, we had a young lady in Atlanta, Georgia, who's diagnosed with breast cancer. She's 32 years old. She goes through 2 years of chemotherapy and radiation, and nothing works. After 2 years of chemo and radiation, she completely exhausts her $2 million health insurance plan. So the company cancels her health insurance. So she has no more health insurance. The doctor calls her in and he said, "This is the worst day of my life, but we can't treat you anymore. The hospital won't let me, you don't have insurance anymore." And he said, "Besides that, we've tried everything under the sun, we've tried everything possible. Nothing's really working yet. My best guess, you have less than 6 months to live. You need to get your affairs in order." And she's like, 6 months? Are you crazy? I'm 32 years old. Aren't there experimental treatments? Is there anything we can do at all? He says, "There's lots of experimental treatments, but they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't have any money." And he said, "I'm sorry. You really need to get your affairs in order." She drove home from that appointment, and the very first phone call she made when she got home was to our agent. She said, "I just found out that I'm going to die in the next 6 months. And I have a $250,000 life insurance policy with you and your company. I got to know for sure it's going to pay off because I have a 6-year-old daughter. I got to know she's going to get that money." And our agent said, "Well, wait a minute. Don't you remember we have living benefits? We don't have to wait for you to die. You can get the money out tomorrow. You could take a trip around the world with your daughter if you wanted to before you pass away, or you could set it up in an estate or trust, make sure she's taken care of the rest of her life." Instead, what she did, she filed a living benefits claim, and she took $125,000 out of that $250,000 policy, and she paid for an experimental treatment. She is still alive today, 17 years later, completely cancer-free. Life insurance that keeps you alive. I'm guessing that's the first time you've been to that seminar. I'm telling you folks, in my 44 years, I've never seen anything more profound than this. After 44 years in the industry, one of the things you realize is anytime the insurance industry makes a decision, it's always better for the insurance industry than it is for people. This is the first time I've ever seen them do what's better for the consumer. You are 9 times more likely to have a critical illness in your life than you are to die early. So it's much more valuable to have life insurance with living benefits. The good news is it costs virtually the exact same amount as regular old death insurance. And so the person who invited you tonight can give you way more information about it, but it's really a way to protect all that money. Anybody can show you how to grow a big savings account. How do you protect it when somebody gets sick? That's really, really important. That's what we specialize in. The last story I'll share with you tonight is about the second client in my life. I'm literally 1 week old in the business. I drive to Wichita, Kansas, and I met with a friend of mine. And his wife. They just became ministers of a very small church. And it's a dinky little church. So all they got was a $25,000 salary. That's it, no benefits. They didn't get a retirement plan, they didn't get any insurances, just $25,000 a year. They already had 3 children at the time, 1, 3, and 5. So let me ask you a question. If you had 3 children that young and you were only making $25,000 a year, do you think you might be a little behind? Yeah, behind on their bills, behind on their promises. They were a mess. But they caught the vision. So we did the funnel, and we found $50 in the funnel. I can tell you, he did not want to give me that $50. They had been so tight for so long. He wanted it so bad. But he said, "Mike, if I don't give you that $50 tonight, I'm never going to get started. I'll lose all those years of compounding." So he wrote me a check for $50. And every month, $50 came out of his checking account. 50 a month, 50 a month, every month, 50 a month. How many of you believe if you were only making $25,000 a year, you'd feel $50 come out of your check every month? Do you believe that?
Yep.
Yeah, you bet. And even though they were ministers, I could hear cussing coming from somewhere every single month. And when you start a new habit, there's always a little bit of sacrifice, isn't there? A little bit of pain.
Yep.
But the most amazing thing happens to people when they start to see their money grow. It's like a miracle. They always find more money. This family that could barely afford $50 a month, 8 months later, moved it up to $100 a month. They didn't even call me. They just did it themselves. 4 months after that, we got back together, did their annual review. We did the funnel again, and we found another $100 in the funnel. So we moved it up to $200 a month. And they've been doing $200 a month now every single month for the last 43 years. But they're ministers. If you've ever been part of a church, you know sometimes people in church give money to their ministers for Christmases and birthdays. One time a family gave them $500 for their family for Christmas. They made a decision that since the church was not providing a retirement plan, that if somebody from the church gave them money, they could put it in their retirement plan. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So over the years, a few different families, a few different amounts. Bottom line, 43 years, $200 a month, and a few gifts, that's it. So 8 years ago, I'm sitting in my office in Littleton. That's where our national headquarters is now, right down the road here in Littleton. And I'm sitting there, and Jill calls, the young lady, Jill. She calls me on the phone, and she goes, "Hey, Mike, the reason I'm calling," she goes, "my husband gave a sermon last night on these teeny tiny incidents that happen in life that change your life forever." I guarantee if I went around the room and gave you all 5 minutes, you could all tell me a teeny tiny story that changed your life forever. Positive or negative, right? We all have stories like that. She said, 35 years ago, you came into our house and showed us how to save and invest money. We've lived in the same house for 35 years, had the same church building for 35 years. Not one other human being has ever stepped foot in our church or our home to talk to us about money except for you. She said, if you hadn't come over here, we'd be just as broke today as we were 35 years ago. She said, we just called to thank you. Well, that's obviously gratifying, right? Nice to hear thank you once in a while. But then she went on to say, and I knew the real reason she was calling. She goes, Mike, do you happen to know how much money's in our account right now? And I said, well, Jill, of course I know how much money's in your account. I'm your representative. The reason she was calling me that very week, they had just gone over $1 million. $200 a month and a few gifts and nothing else. We call these people the millionaires next door, because most people think all the millionaires in the world are rock stars and movie stars and sports stars, but the reality is most of the millionaires in the world live next door to you and you don't even know they're millionaires. They're usually very conservative with their money, and then they pass that information on generation after generation to their families. The very best part of this story, when we started, those children were 1, 3, and 5. Tonight, those children are 44, 46, and 48. Guess what all 3 of those children are doing? $200 a month and $300 a month and $400 a month. They've all been doing it since they were 15 years old. At the age of 55, each one of them will have $1 million each, guaranteed tax-free for the rest of their lives. We didn't just change a family that night, we're changing generations of families. And you and your family could be next. That's why you're invited tonight. So if you saw something of value, something of significance, something you want more information about, that's the logical step in the process. You might be interested in a personal, private, confidential appointment. We take that very seriously. We can talk in generalities here, but when it's your money, it's very private and confidential. All we do is look at where you're at and where you want to go to see if we have any ideas to help you get there. We're a non-fee-based company, so that means we don't charge for appointments, and we also don't charge that 1 or 2% fee per year. We found a much more effective way to work with our clients, where 100% of your money goes into your account and not into somebody else's pocket. And trust me, that makes a giant difference over time. It doesn't matter how little you have or how much you have, or if you have none. I was minus $30,000. The first thing they showed me how to do is get out of debt, which was life-saving. And then it showed me how to ultimately become financially independent. It doesn't really matter. We have all sizes and shapes in our company. So we'd love to help you if that's at all. I will tell you, if you decided to do anything with us, it'll probably require an element of change. And I've been sharing with people now for 44 years as I've traveled around the United States. The day you're ready to change something in your life is the day you might have to change a few things in your life. And we believe we give you the greatest opportunities, at least financially, to change some of those things in your life that will set you on a course and guarantee your financial success and dignity all the years of your life. So they're going to bring the food in here. While they bring the food in, I'll walk around and say goodnight to everybody and answer any questions at that time. One of the questions I get every single night is, when is the next one, and can I bring my kids back? Or can I bring my parents back? We get that every night. The answer is absolutely positively. We'd love to have you. We do it every single month right here, and you can bring as many friends and relatives as you like. We'll feed them all for you and have a good time and see if we can help them out also. But you've been a great audience. Appreciate you laughing at all my dad jokes. My kids would all appreciate that. And feel free to use any of them throughout the next week or two and do the best you can with them. But thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate it.